I start as you mean to go on, eh? So this is Lakechia. Can we have another round of applause, please?
Hey, so I'm Lakechia, and thank you, Jess and Dave and the team for inviting me to this first talk. I live in Milton Keynes, and I only come up to London when like my friends have birthdays or I have board meetings, so this is a nice treat. I have been working now actually for 7 years, about 8 years. I finished university in my early 20s, and I studied biomedical sciences, so I'm a scientist at heart. I studied up in York for a couple of years and then came back down to Milton Keynes and was kind of wondering what the scene was. Long story short, I wanted to do medicine, and I worked my whole kind of like educational secondary school time with that goal in mind. And then I did all the tests, all the UCATs and everything, and then I got to interview and then I failed. And it was just such an awful time because I was thinking like, what am I going to do now? So I decided to do biomedical sciences, which in lots of terms is like pre-med. And it was during those 2 to 3 years that I kind of thought, oh, like there's a lot more that you can do with a science degree than I initially thought. The kind of like keen student that I am, I used to like call lecturers and stuff like at 8 a.m. in the morning, ask them questions about careers and stuff. And I realized a lot of my friends didn't necessarily have that kind of, I'm not sure if it was confidence, but maybe just the curiosity to ask lots of questions. And so I started like banking these questions, and a science communications module came up at my school. So I ended up going around the campus with my camcorder, filming responses to questions that I got from lecturers and like sending it to my friends. It blew up on Twitter, which obviously is now X. And some schools got involved, and then we had our first event up at York in 2018, I believe. We had about, I don't know, 50, 70 students all in a room with speakers, something similar to this, and then we just kept doing it. I came down to Milton Keynes, and I thought who's heard of Milton Keynes in here? Oh, okay, that's very nice. So I came down to Milton Keynes. I thought nothing was happening. Like I need to be coming to London for events and stuff. But then I started working within the government. So my full-time role, which I'm still doing, is a tech ecosystem lead within Milton Keynes. We've had some really big kind of advances there recently where we've had Santander move its headquarters down there. A lot of like AI companies that hate the rates of London are moving to Milton Keynes because it's like a half-an-hour train ride. I guess Jess and you guys are an example of that. You know, you do a lot of business across the UK, but Milton Keynes is your home. And so I'm kind of the facilitator of that. So I bring in a lot of tech companies into Milton Keynes. We now have Red Bull Technology is there, the Open University headquarters are there, Santander headquarters are now there. And I've just been commissioned to run the first ever Milton Keynes Tech Week. So if anyone wants information on that or have an idea, because I'm still in planning stage, please do let me know. But I think actually one of these pictures, so I think on the bottom in the middle, so last year I ran the first ever Milton Keynes Artificial Intelligence Festival, which was essentially an anniversary from the Bletchley Park thing. I don't know if you guys heard, like Elon Musk came to Bletchley and it was this whole thing, and Rishi and Kamala Harris, all these big political leaders a couple of years ago, to work on AI and governance. And so I was leading in terms of kind of the celebrations and the anniversary of that. And for some reason, I've become like this events person. I didn't study anything to do with that, but it's just led quite naturally. And I've managed to keep Girls in Science alongside that. So Girls in Science is my annual leave and my late night stuff. And while I'm on Netflix scrolling, I'm doing that. And then I work in the council during the day. So Girls in Science have been running now for 7 or 8 years. So yeah, 7 years, let's just put that there, I think. So 8 years this year, I guess you would say. And we've gone from, again, 50, 60 people in a room. It's a nice tune. From 50, 60 people in a room to like, I think we have, my recent numbers is we've impacted about 4,400 young women in the kind of effort to inspire and engage them into STEM. And what's really interesting is I know that I'm the demographic that I'm trying to reach. Those people that have studied science, not quite sure what's happening next, or they studied something in STEM, and they want the community and something to kind of just have on the side to give them options. One of the best parts of our events is kind of bringing early career people and people that are very senior in industry, and people like get job interviews and stuff days after they've been at our events. That's something that's really exciting to me. We started before COVID. During COVID, obviously, we all went online. We did a lot of like international pieces, worked with a lot of different companies, especially in America. There was a big movement there with Wonder Woman Tech. And then it kind of organically transitioned into lots of advisory roles. So I know, I might go on to the next slide actually. So some of the companies we've worked with over the years. So I remember we were asked to be part of like the Google Diversity Consortium, again, kind of the whole concept of understanding what Gen Z's needs are within the workplace. We've done events with lots of different people, a lot of universities. Some of our most, like last week we did an event with Santander at some schools. So we have a wide variety of partners that we've worked with through the years, but all of this has happened very organically. I mean, in all honesty, I am a big dreamer. When I did think of this event, like this whole concept initially, I did kind of see this happening, but I didn't really know exactly what the path was to get there. And I don't think I forced anything too much. And I think especially because it's not my full-time job, I'm very kind of casual about it. And there is scope in the future, I think. And I mean, it might be useful to ask some of you guys about taking that leap from it being a part-time thing to a full-time thing. But at the moment, I feel really comfortable. And the best part is my role within the government really aligns with this, because I'm meeting tech companies every single day, and a lot of them are kind of understanding this whole like STEM pipeline challenge, like what are the talent challenges that we have in the UK at the moment with tech. And I can be like, see me on LinkedIn and can help you out with that, aside from the stuff that we do. So it's really exciting. Just a quick one, if you want to engage before I kind of go properly into the talk in terms of tips. We have an Instagram page. If you want to find us on LinkedIn or anything like that, please do let me know. I think this will be later on in the deck as well. But I think the main thing I want to do now is just talk about some of the challenges and the tips and some advice pieces. So I think generally, when I think about what we do, I think it's about understanding the whole concept of we live in a world that has attention economy as one of its main forms of currencies. Everyone is competing for your time and your attention and your affection. And you see that every day with whether it's Instagram, which is my personal addiction, or it's adverts online. Now they've started putting like adverts in Netflix when you pause a thing and stuff. And you just see that constantly. And I realized that with Gen Zs, I have to be completely honest, I'm so glad that I didn't grow up with TikTok and Instagram being this big, because I don't think I would have been able to study at all, personally. Like, I remember I deleted Instagram for 2 years while I was at university, because I just knew that like I need to discipline myself, and the best way to do this is to cut off completely. But that's not necessarily the kind of headspace that everyone is in while they're studying. And so what I really wanted to do is kind of tap into that sort of like feminine side of girls that are really very super girly, very stereotypically girly, because that's kind of what I am. But still have this like inner drive and this inner ambition, and kind of like tap into that. So our social media is a big part of that. And our events are also a big part of that as well. In terms of building a community, and I actually spoke about this at our church over the weekend. Like, I think the leadership, not as like speaking properly, it was like a testimony I was sharing. But I think that like the leadership that a place has is always going to be the blueprint and the footprint of everything that happens underneath. And it's just such a small detail that I don't think we always look at, especially as founders. Like, our personal integrity, and I'll talk about this later on, but the way we just conduct ourselves with every single conversation that we have and every single kind of one-on-one opportunity we have to engage with people is super important, and that is the brand of your company. It's really sad, but like there's this whole theory about the whole 7-second principle, which you guys might have heard of. Like, people will think they know everything, and I do it myself. People think they know everything about you within the first 7 seconds of looking at you. And that can happen through interviews and stuff. But like when you're pitching for your company and stuff, that's also a really big deal as well. And I don't know about you, I've spoken to hundreds of like C-suite executives and stuff. Students are always the toughest crowd. Like you'll never find a tougher crowd than like a group of 13 and 14-year-old girls. And I always get like the most kind of like agitated when I'm getting into kind of student bits like that. But they have this perception of who you are. And so we really work very heavily on like our visuals. I'll go back to the last slide. I think last week when we were doing an event, is that even here? Yeah, okay. So the bottom right-hand corner. So last week we had an event at a secondary school with Santander, and we had 300 students there, and we were talking to them about data science. Oh, yeah, data science. And we were kind of looking at apprenticeship programs and stuff, specifically with Santander. And it was so funny how really small things like the lighting in the room, and like I think I put on like Latina like dance kuduro music in the background, and how that really just created such a unique environment for them that made them excited to do something different. And I think especially depending on who your target audience is, sometimes the smallest things can produce the biggest results and the biggest forms of excitement. And what I try to do with Girls in Science is to create the events that I would have wanted to go to growing up. And it has to be something unique, otherwise it's not going to stick out. I think I've touched on that last point already. So in terms of education, yeah, I think I've spoken a bit about this. I think sometimes you look at buildings and you look at tall skyscrapers where you know companies are at, and it almost doesn't seem like real people live there or real people work there. That was one of the biggest tasks that we had to kind of challenge. And it was about bringing students into environments where they thought like, you know, robots work in this building, and actually understanding that there are people there with stories and personalities who have quirks. Like they may be a coder by day, but they're a Zumba dancer by night, or they may be an executive during the day doing consulting and project management, but like they go home and do crochet knit work or something. But like kind of having those stories and finding the baseline of, guess, all people, of like, we are people who have hobbies, who have different quirks, and kind of bringing the humanity to the industry. And I think when people find someone that they kind of connect to, it makes them more open to understand what that person is experiencing. In this particular format, it's tech or it's STEM. And so, yeah, the kind of human piece was really important to us. And again, kind of going back to what I mentioned, I'm sure kind of growing up, there'll be one or two assemblies maybe that you can remember that you had that kind of stuck out to you for some random reason. And I want to create those kind of 1 or 2 or 3 moments that the girls can kind of look back on and be like, okay, this was really cool. Let me kind of look into Santander. Let me look into, I don't know, being a Scrum Master or something like that. And that's a big kind of motivation for what I do. So I guess, yeah, okay, I'm just trying to think what I wrote here. Yes, so the 3 kind of R's that I guess I would kind of point here is that journey of what I guess I did to go from an idea to a company that's working with pretty big brands at the moment. The first one is risk. So understanding that you have this kind of vision, and you want an idea to become something. I know it sounds really, really simple, but sometimes we have pictures in our head. How many of you in here have like thought of an invention and you thought this is going to be amazing, it's going to sell millions of dollars, like in like, I don't know, Western market, and then you just never did anything about it? Yeah. Perfect. Yeah, exactly. Same. I can't tell you how many inventions I've come up with and I've just thought, nah, it's probably on like Temu. How do you say it? Temu or Temu? Temu? Yeah, it's probably on Temu by now, like, and you just kind of like put it to the back of your head and you don't really think about it. But like, there is this kind of path from an idea to a reality, and the bit in the middle is kind of that cringy, weird phase where you're going to have to kind of go outside of your circle and be a bit cringe and kind of do something that not a lot of people around you are doing. And I always say this to the girls, it's like, if you want an above average career, you can't do what everyone else is doing. Like, it's just not going to happen. You have to stick your head out there and do something really different. Reputation. This is probably, I should put that as the biggest one. Like, so I've been working on this side hustle for like 7 years, and it's probably maybe the past 2 or 3 years that I've seen people come to us rather than me kind of like putting ourselves out there. One thing about your reputation professionally, I've noticed is, you know, and everyone in this room probably knows this, like it will take 10 years to build and 2 seconds to completely like falter to the ground. And that's definitely a process that needs investing in. Like you can't do it subconsciously. It needs to be something that you've really like invest yourself in. A big part of that is like personal branding and making sure that you present yourself in the best way, both online. And there is this really weird kind of, I did talk about being cringe before, but we all know 1 or 2 people in our circles that are just doing way too much on LinkedIn and need to like calm down, versus people that you don't even like know that much about, but they're doing some incredible things and they never post about it. And it's kind of finding that middle thing in between. Practical things, I would just say with reputation, start small. Sometimes you need to create clout in order for stuff to come. I was speaking to an AI company guy who works really heavily in Silicon Valley, and he was like, if you actually go to San Francisco, it's actually a really boring town. Like there's not actually that much to do. There's like lots of little coffee shops, and I've never been, but this is what he's telling me. There's lots of coffee shops and like it actually looks kind of dead. But it's created such this huge like international reputation of being the place to do tech. And it's all just like, of course stuff has happened, but in terms of you physically going there and seeing it, it's not very obvious. It's basically clout. Like they've basically built themselves a brand that's kind of, I guess, glossier than what it actually is. And I found for Girls in Science, hand on heart, like I had to kind of do that. When I first started, I realized that I wasn't going to get the attention from the big companies by just being what it was. And so I started doing small things. And then I would enter like local awards and I'd speak to the team and be like, okay, we're going to try our best to win the set of awards. Let's do a series of events so we can win this local award so that we can send an email to this company and be like, we are an award-winning social enterprise. And then like it worked. So we did it a couple of times. I think we've won like 5 awards. We went from like small local ones to like women-based ones to more regional ones. And we're kind of like the national level now. But it's almost like that whole concept of eating an elephant bit by bit. Like you have to kind of look at where you are, think about what the next best step is to build that reputation and just keep going. And I think, yeah, just a big thing here is part of building a reputation. This isn't the stage to start asking people. This is not the stage to start marketing. This is, well, what I found, it's not the stage to start putting yourself out there and selling. It's the stage to make friends and not contacts, and build up that repertoire between yourself and your potential customers and like just be nice. And then what we found was a couple of years later, after they saw everything we'd done and we'd been friends for a really long time, then we go in for the sell. And that was always quite a really big process. And it took a couple of years, to be fair, and in lots of different ways. But then it just doesn't make you look desperate and it doesn't make you look like you need them. And I think there's a lot of power when you have a relationship and then you kind of go in with the evidence that you've built up from those couple of years ago. So yeah, that kind of brings us to the revenue. So I guess we found that the clients and audience will only come when they see that there's something putting their money into and their time and their resources into. So with us, all of our events, we had a very big kind of like social media, well, not necessarily social media, but just media presence. I probably would say LinkedIn was the biggest place where we put stuff on. And that's also the other thing. We only very recently started on Instagram, but that was because our target audience wasn't on Instagram when we first started. We wanted to impress the big companies so that we could get the funding to then get the audience that are on Instagram, if that makes sense. So we built up on LinkedIn for a very, very long time. All of our media stuff was going on LinkedIn. All of the like testimonials and all the event pictures, everything was on there. We built up the contacts on there. And then we have all these business people being like, oh, like I saw your event the other day. Like, can we like have a conversation? And it's like, oh, okay, yeah. And then now, and it's probably been the past 1 or 2 years, now we're kind of building in the schools piece and kind of almost in a weird way, kind of doing it the other way around of like, build it and they will come. So the people that are coming are the audience, or the girls that we are now working with really closely, but we had to have something for them to come to. There was no point in us saying, oh, just come and hear me speak about my career. Like there needs to be a little more clout behind that. And I personally wasn't going to put any of my own personal funds into this. I wanted it to be something that was very business centric, and that could pay for itself. And then the last point that I will put here is just the general reflection. So I've mentioned this before, who you are in public matters, who you are when you interact with people matters. We live in a really smart world where people can really just see right through you completely. And I really believe in being authentic. And I will always pick the nicer contact over the more powerful contact every single time. There's been times where we've, struck conversations with people from really big brands that I know have stack loads of money that are willing to give, but I just wasn't feeling the vibe and I just didn't think they were very nice people. And I think there's a lot of integrity in saying no to that and just rolling with what feels really good to you. And that's been something that I've learned through the years. And that's both in like social and business interactions as well. Core values. I just think that I know some people say like, what is your why? Like you need to have a why for going into business. And I completely agree with that. But for me, the motivation, the why is important, but I think the motivation needs to be more than why you're doing it in the first place. Because as a founder, and you will know, if it's a long process, you will have chapters where you're kind of like, no, I just want to give this all up and just do my normal job. Like I'm just stressing myself out too much. And I always say you need to outsource your motivation and have a plan for that, because there will be moments where you'd want to stop, but you need to have a plan of action for when that happens. For me, motivation kind of dwindles. For me, it's events. Events is a thing that kind of sparks my motivation, whether it's I'm in the event or I'm going to someone else's. That's always a really big kind of like fireworks moment for me. So that's kind of my plan of action. And then understanding your core values. In my personal opinion, I'm a Christian, and I just think we all have a set amount of time in the world, and I don't really know when I'm gonna I don't know, God forbid, get hit by a truck or whatever. But I just feel like we don't know how many days we have on the earth, and I want to be as productive as I physically can every single day. And that's a real driving force for what I do with my work. And then also kind of one of the qualities that I really personally want to build in my own life is just generosity. And I feel like Girls in Science is a way for me to do that, is giving back my time and some of my wisdom. And to be fair, kind of stealing other people's bits of wisdom and showcasing that to our girls. That's really important. And that's another core value of mine. Other random things that are just really good tips, I would recommend doing lots of research on body language and stuff. I think that's something that is often not really thought about. I was really preoccupied with etiquette courses and stuff growing up for some reason. I think I watched The Sound of Music too much, but I found now it's really funny. Now we're going to investor network dinners and stuff, and all those things that I remember obsessing over when I was young are kind of coming into play, and it's nice to have that full circle moment. But that whole thing of social interaction and understanding what that first 7 seconds mean, and to be fair, it's not, or now, it's not something I'm thinking about, but subconsciously when you teach yourself that through the years, you'll see it kind of playing out without you even realizing. And then the last thing that I want to kind of just mention here is the personability piece. People never buy your company, people always buy you. They always buy you. They always buy into the person that's leading it. So I really feel like a part of the whole process is working on yourself and looking at yourself objectively. I've had friends figure this out with me, and coaches and mentors. I don't think it's always something you can figure out by yourself, but asking someone or asking a mentor or a coach to be when I walk into a room, what's the vibe that I give off? Do I have a resting mean face, or am I always too peppy? Tell me what my energy is like, and then work on it. I think we're all humans, and personal development is a part of who we are. But it's also a very good business skill if you manage it correctly as well. And I think that is it. Is that 15 minutes?
Perfect.
Is it?
Perfect.
Are you sure?
Perfect. Thank you, man.